normal people become terrified of criminals.
Shots were just fired. Police just came out and told us, and we're headed there right now.
They become terrified of their own government.
Ladies and gentlemen, I give you predictive programming. Hey, who wants to read those words?
I don't want to say it out loud. It
Okay,
says,
are you ready, everybody? Civil War.
What is this?
Official trailer, HD, A24. The new movie that is coming out in 2024, starring Kirsten Dunst and many others, is a movie about 19 states seceding from the Union, a civil war erupting, and the Western forces of California and Texas are attacking their way through the U.S. to make their way to D.C. for some reason. We don't know the exact story. All I know is the premise, based on the trailer, sounds completely ridiculous. Texas and California will never unite. There would not be a civil war in which those two states are unified because there are states between them. However, they do mention 19 states seceded in the trailer, so it could be that Texas and California are part of the secession, but the reason it's called the Western Force of Texas and California is because they're the two largest states in the seceding group. I don't understand why they would team up at all. I wonder what the story is going to be. But
how is there a Civil War movie that they did not consult the Timcast crew on? That's what I want to know.
Yeah.
I feel like this should have been like where they focused on.
I got a feeling that they're not going to involve foreign countries coming in and because what would happen in a real civil war is the CCP would be heavily involved funding the war.
Absolutely.
You'd see lots of Chinese weapons and planes and
the
tanks.
Russians and the Iranians and the Syrians
like
and
every
the
civil war.
Like,
It'd be a bit of a mess.
Yeah, it'll be the Israeli government as well, especially.
And they would say
Mossad would be everywhere.
Yeah, they would call it California, but it ain't California doing the weapon. Same what
No,
Ukraine's doing right now.
It would be California. And the Chinese would go to them and they'd say, we will give you anything you want, and we don't care what happens afterwards.
And we will guarantee your independence after you win.
No.
That's what they'll tell them.
Right. Yes. They're saying, just fight each other. Just rip your country to shreds. That's it. But a lot of people are tweeting out predictive programming. The idea of predictive programming is that powerful elites, government agents or whatever, condition the public through mass media to encourage certain behaviors in the event of a certain circumstance. So a simple idea would be, let's say civil war breaks out. Nobody knows what it's going to look like. They want to create an image of what a civil war would look like before it happens so that your behaviors will fall into a certain camp. So some ways to explain this, right? People don't know what gunshots sound like because they only hear guns from movies. That's not what gun sounds like. Every time someone raises a gun in a movie, the hammer clicks, the gun cocks, which makes literally no sense. But because and I don't believe that this is to condition you, it's because they're trying to make you know the gun's coming. But you'll always see in movies like Indiana Jones, for instance, the new one, everybody raises guns to him and you hear all the guns cocking. Like, dude, the guns are already cocked, round is already chambered. They're raising the gun. There would be no sound, but for dramatic effect. So imagine it this way. Civil War breaks out, everyone does a bunch of random things. You make a movie, Civil War breaks out, and water is poisoned. Don't drive Teslas, a big component of the film. Then what happens is, this idea is seen in everyone's mind from watching a movie that's probably wrong. Civil War breaks out, everyone says better stay away from Teslas. That's the idea of predictive programming. I don't believe that's the case. I mean, it's possible, I guess. I think the reality is there have been numerous articles, numerous statements from academics, talking about the possibility of a civil war. There have been numerous polls where people say they want a civil war. There have been members of Congress calling for a national divorce. And some dude goes, this would be a great movie. And he writes it all down, goes to an investor and says, let's make this movie.
Yeah, there's many
What do
things.
we find out Tim's really behind the movie?
He's like,
are you bankrolling this, Tim? Are you financing all
the whole point
of
of
this?
the past 7 years was so that I can make this
doing the
movie.
predictive programming, I see.
So we were actually talking about this idea yesterday. I just posted the clip on my Twitter at Luke We Are Change, describing what I was talking about when it comes to predictive programming, because I do believe that there are actual incidences where this happened. 24 and torture is one of them. I mentioned it yesterday. We also saw the build up to the Iraq war have a lot of popular media that went along with it that essentially drove the American people to believe that their lives were in danger unless we fought the terrorist over there and not over here. So when you look at the intelligence agencies and their larger influence on pop culture, on media and entertainment, this has been something that they've been influencing for many decades now. A lot of people bring up a Mockingbird. A lot of people bring up the commission hearings that were happening within Congress that exposed the infiltration of the corporate media by the intelligence agencies. And if you're at the intel agencies, what better way to get away with these larger ideas than to kind of make people acquiesce to them through entertainment, through subconscious, subliminal messaging in films, in movies. I think this is why we are seeing such racial division tones almost in every form of entertainment now. I think it's also important to note that right before the Ukrainian war, there was an extreme amount of Russian propaganda. We saw the corporate deep state kind of media all in unison say, Russia, Russia, Russia hacked this election. And as we know, none of that was actually true, but the Russian boogeyman was built up. And now we are in a proxy war with Russia using Ukraine as essentially our larger kind of forces on the ground to do the fighting for us and sacrifice their lives for this larger neoconservative objective. So I do believe predictive programming is true. I do believe it has been used. There's a lot of different ways to interpret it. A lot of people will extrapolate whatever little things they want to extrapolate, but I think it's clear. Intel agencies control the media. The media does send out particular messaging that does actually happen.
You think there's a strong possibility that they're conditioning us to prepare for a civil war?
Now, as far as the whole Civil War context, again, you can't really say because it's more clear after the fact. So,
real quick, sorry to interrupt, but it could be that they're trying to condition people to not want civil war.
It's also impossible to figure it out until after everything happens, because then you kind of put all the pieces together, especially when it came to justifying torture in America, when it came to the larger entertainment series that also had Intel influences that were excusing torture by the Intel agencies. That's a clear example of them then us finding out through Snowden and WikiLeaks that, yes, they were actually torturing and trying to excuse it through media forms of entertainment. So a couple years down the line, if there's a civil war, we could say, yes, this was the kind of predictive programming. When the whole Russiagate collusion stuff was happening, no one kind of foresaw, hey, this is going to lead us to be in a kind of proxy war with Russia. Now that we are, I think it's fair to say that all the stuff that we were hearing about Russia being the boogeyman laid the groundwork for us now being in this proxy war. So this is how it works. We're going to know definitively later down the line. We can't know now. We can't tell now.
The reason why they were trying to claim that Trump was a Russian spy is because we were supposed to be at war with Russia in Ukraine in 2014 and 15 into 2016, or I should just say 2017, because Obama leaves, everything freezes. The escalation on the eastern front of Ukraine sort of stopped. Donald Trump gets in. He says, I don't want war. And then all of a sudden the Ukrainian stuff froze. I was in Ukraine when this stuff was all started. I was there at the beginning of the Euromaidan protests. I got to go and actually see the statue that was toppled, fragments of Lenin's head on the ground, and then Molotov cocktails. I ended up leaving around then. It escalated from there, and the remaining vice crew actually went to Yanukovych's house, the former president who was ousted and fled the country. Then Trump gets elected. Everything stops.
And if Hillary would have became president, there was a very high likelihood that there would have been war with Russia. John McCain...
likelihood, 100%.
Yeah. John McCain, I mean, it also depends on a lot of different factors. China also plays a role in this as well. So does Iran. So does Saudi Arabia. But we have to understand, Lindsey Graham and John McCain were in Ukraine during the Maidan Revolution, which was influenced by the intelligence agencies that also helped spur it on and help move Ukraine away from the Russian influence towards the more NATO Western influence. They were there on the ground saying, yes, we have to fight the Russians. We have to kick out the Russians. We have to have NATO here inside of Ukraine all the way back in 2014. And they were banking the military industrial complex, the central banksters, the controllers were banking on a larger conflict if Trump wasn't elected. And Trump still did some things. He did send lethal weapons to Ukraine, but his foreign policy definitely wasn't as aggressive as Hillary Clinton's would have been, as she's a total bloodthirsty war hawk that literally celebrates the torture and death of individuals and cheers and laughs about it.
I was thinking as you were talking that
He
saw he died. That we saw
died.
Gaddafi. That was so crazy. She laughed. That was, she
As
thought
there's like a
the camera
huge
wasn't on or
knife
something.
just being stabbed into his
don't say
buttocks.
it.
What we're doing is predictive programming as well. It's just not as subtle as putting it in a movie. We're actually just projecting what we think is going to happen, and that in a way is prepping people for maybe believing, okay, I'll get ready for what you think is going to happen. So that's a big responsibility. And Luke, I'm really glad you brought up that show 24.
Yes.
Jack Bauer. It was Kiefer Sutherland. It was in 2003. Right after September 11th, right after the towers came down, it was like he was like fighting terrorists, and he was just such a good guy.
And there was a
always
nuke about to go off in New York City, and they needed to torture someone to save everyone in New York
like
City.
anything.
And then right after that, they were like, oh, we're torturing people. It's okay because we want to save people from getting nuked. Meanwhile, they were torturing goat herders that literally were sleeping with someone's cousin that they didn't like, and the Afghani neighbor snitched on them, said that they're Taliban, and then they were sent to Egypt and literally had their children, I can't even say this, but hurt in unspeakable ways by CIA officials that were torturing them in front of the goat herders there. For frick's sakes, it's just mind-boggling to see the level of just how sinister this is, and the things behind the scenes that actually do happen that they use to justify this kind of criminality and insanity.
We used to watch 24 because you guys
The Bush
watch.
admin loves 24. So I have fun. I'll give a short version of his story. Don't kick me off from ever coming back to Timcast after tell you this. So I once spent the day with Karl Rove, and his favorite show was 24.
Get out.
True story.
I don't care.
Yeah, I know.
No, that was
What do you like about it?
I think all the things that
torturing
Luke just described.
people. Going after.
We didn't get into a lot of detail. I don't want to get a lot of detail. This has been many years ago.
It was like the show's 24 is all about 20. Every episode there was 24 hours until some horrible thing happened. So he's always in a rush. He was always a race against time.
No, it was a real time, wasn't it? Like 24 was the episode.
Oh, that's right. And then an hour per
episode was
episode?
10 to 11.
What was bizarre to me is I would have thought someone like Karl Rove, who's been in the places that he's been and lived the life that he's lived, he would think like, this show's stupid. It's so fake. It's so whatever. But he was like, no, this is a great show.
The Pentagon.
I watch every
I feel like House of Cards did that too, man.
Yeah.
House of Cards made us think that it's okay for politicians to be corrupt. Like it's like, yo, it's just how it is. Look how charming Kevin Spacey is in this too. It's okay. He smiles.
The Pentagon literally hires Hollywood producers and writers to write scripts for them about events that they then go to the American people and say was truth. They hired Jeremy Bruckheimer to do the whole Jessica Lynch story. If you remember that story,
I did not know that.
was an insane large psyop on the American people to push the Iraq war, to make everyone stand for this very strong, independent woman that stood up and fought to the last Iraqi. She stood up on a gunner and took them all down when in reality she was cowering in fear. The Iraqis took her to a hospital and said, hey, America, can you please pick her up? America sent in tanks, blew up the hospital, took her out, and then the CIA and Jerry Bruckheimer ran with a story saying this brave woman was saved by American heroes after she fought killing the last Iraqi, which was all bullcrap.
I know what the predictive programming is. The main character, the protagonist, what is their job?
Save the world.
No, they're a journalist.
Oh.
Ugh.
They're journalists. And so already the trailer's narrative is civil war is bad, journalists are good.
Gross.
Here we go. The media is distrusted. For years, people have hated the media. Kirsten Dunst plays a journalist, and she has this line. It's actually a good line. She says, every time I came back from a war, I thought I was sending home a warning. And I'm like, I really like that. She was saying the warning was, don't do this here. And
I think the last time that the last time that happened was Vietnam. I can't think of the journalist's name I'd like to name right now from Vietnam that came back with some of those warnings, but I wish I could name.
This is a good. I like how the word wars and the word warning. Yeah, don't do it here. Look what happened in Ukraine. Look what's happening in Ukraine. That's what happens when war happens
Ukraine's
somewhere. Don't
destroyed.
do it here.
I can't believe these freaking lunatics that were out there screaming from the rooftops that Ukraine could win that war.
No, they were lying, and they knew they were lying.
I don't know anything about anything, and I remember early on, I was like, "No, there's no way. This is not going to happen."
The only,
if they won,
the
it would be
only
like
country to get poorer after the fall of the Soviet Union, and they're going to beat Russia.
Yeah,
Come on.
And I
One of the
remember
most
having an
corrupted
argument.
countries in the world.
Yeah,
Like, even if they won, even if that, it would be so devastating.
It wasn't possible.
Yeah,
it
like-
was never possible. And I remember having this conversation with people that were like, so you're just talking because you love Putin. I'm like, I don't like Putin. And we're like, well, you can look at facts and just say this country is going to get annihilated over time. And that's what's happening. They've killed off a generation of men in Ukraine.
This is offensive. Somebody in the chat said, Alex Garland is a genius. Tim didn't pass the 11th grade. That is shockingly offensive. I didn't pass the 9th grade.
Who's Alex
I
Garland?
can't believe you beat me. I want to say I'm around 10th grade. I dropped out of high school.
Oh, nice.
Stop showing off. You guys, I'm jealous.
I was
That'd be like such
homeschooled.
a
Hey,
chump
I
for
can,
going to
I can actually
college.
top Tim on this. I was homeschooled and I dropped out of homeschool.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.